All right, guys, welcome to another edition of Texans Unfiltered, a Houston football podcast for your Houston Texans. I am young Ari Gold, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host John Wade, the Garnet Texan, and we have a special guest tonight, a listener slash friend of the show, Chris Otto, also a former like number one fan of State of the Texans podcast. Always got shout outs for this question's from Otto, this question's from Otto, this question's from Otto. Chris Otto.
I'm just a guy, I have
Just a guy?
couple of football opinions now and again. It is what it is.
Okay. Well, we'll take it. John, what's up, bro?
I forgot how to work a mute button. It's been one of those days on camera all day long. Unfortunately, I know working remote, it's fun, but hey, paycheck's a paycheck. However, you're like a little star now. Like again, you're getting back to where you were. Is that right? You've been on podcasts all day long. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. Like it was like, hey, can you be on this podcast at 5? Hey, could you be on this podcast at 6? And then Figgy wanted me to come on the podcast and do my Kanye West Donda review with him, which was awesome because I love music more than I love the Texans. So to be able to go and actually talk music was great. So shout out to Figgy Fig and Rocket for having me on. But yeah, it was awesome. But it's just I haven't moved out of this stupid ass chair that I'm in 4 hours. So that sucks.
At this point, either you're really comfortable or really uncomfortable.
Well, I'm comfortable because I have a cooler Astros hat than you do.
You do,
which is not normal.
Which hat is that? It's got World Series champs on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah. What can I say? I don't know. Otto's got the black hat,
black hat,
straight black hat.
I think that's going to be pretty accurate for the position he's taken tonight. So,
and
that's fine.
Honestly, every year I normally get a new Texans hat. Every year. And this year I wasn't feeling it. I don't know. Maybe it's because of what's going on with the team, but I just wasn't feeling it at all.
I bought one specific for golf. It's just like a golf Texans hat. But outside of that, I didn't buy any hat. I got one for free for being a season ticket member, and it's like pure trash. It's like the cheapest hat you could find. It's straight out of Walmart, I feel like. But yeah, I agree. I didn't feel in like I would want to buy much gear this year either. So I totally understand. All right, guys, make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Those are free ways for you to support us. Do what you need to do. Make sure you follow us all on Twitter. Follow Patrick. He says he's got a special guest on the show Thursday. That's great. I hope you do. That's awesome. But it took you guys 6 weeks to actually get recording, so it'll be another situation where I'll believe it when I see it. But nanner boo boo me all you want, buddy. I'm so happy for you. I don't hate over here. I congratulate. Donda is fire. The Kanye album is really good. Even if you don't like Kanye, you guys should definitely go listen to the music, the production, everything about it. It's a really good album. It's got The Weeknd on it, which Otto, you love The Weeknd. I think just as much as I do. So it's definitely awesome. All right, we're here for football though, and we have roster cut downs were today. Akins hasn't been traded yet. Eric Murray hasn't been traded yet. Did Eric Murray end up making the team? He did, I think.
He did.
Yes.
He did. Yeah, 5 safeties. Terrence Brooks made the team, which is great. So do we want to get into Deshaun and the trade rumors being deaded and he's a Texan 2021? I guess let's get into that speculation because it's time to at least have the conversation that most don't want to have, as I think a lot of people have moved on. But unfortunately, yeah. Where do you want to start, John? I mean, you want to get into Deshaun? We have to talk about it. So
we might as well lead off. Like that's what everybody wants to talk about. This way we can also tell people, I don't know, maybe I'll put a little thing at the beginning. If you don't want to hear about Deshaun, skip to 20 minutes into the pod. But unfortunately, that's what people want to talk about because, I mean, At this point, writers are just kind of making up things, like revetting things. Like there was nothing that was shared over the weekend that we haven't heard for 6 months. Like there's nothing that was new. Absolutely nothing. Like back in January, Pat said, "Hey, Deshaun wants to go to the Dolphins." When rumors first got out, like that is not new. That is not even brand new. That's not even news. But you know what? I'll let y'all kind of get into it a little bit because I'm just annoyed by it, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'll start off. The Texans are doing, what the Texans should be doing when it comes to having a valuable asset on your roster. And they're maximizing his value. Nick has a price in his head. And I think what it is it's not the discounted 22 allegation prices. It's the prices that we were all talking about prior to the allegations coming out, which I think were 4, 5 first, whatever the crazy amount was, because that's what it takes to get a top 5 quarterback. There hasn't ever been one traded. Herschel Walker is the status and the bar that everybody measures trades off of. This trade should blow the Herschel Walker trade out of the water, and Nick is doing what he's supposed to do. I'm going to wait. You guys can keep calling. If you think the Michael Lombardi report came out of nowhere, you're tripping. Michael Lombardi spent a ton of time in New England. Michael Lombardi has a ton of he's connected with Nick. He's been connected with Nick for the last 20 years. That came so that Nick could put out a little PSA to everybody. Look, we got an offer. It was a huge offer. It wasn't the offer. So we didn't counter and we didn't have a conversation. That's all there is to it. There's nothing that can be done unless you meet our price. And if not, guess what? We control his future. So he can either not trade waive the trade clause and go where we're getting the best offer, or he could stay on this roster for the rest of his freaking life, because that's what's going to happen. And I love it. And I'm all for it. And I don't really care. Screw Deshaun Watson. You want to come back and surprise us and be our week 1 starter? I don't buy that. I know a lot of people are still holding on hope that he's going to play week 1 and this was all a ploy and whatever conspiracy theories you guys have in your head. This isn't happening. Deshaun's not playing for the Texans week 1. Deshaun's not playing for the Texans week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, all the way through 17. Deshaun Watson is not playing for the Houston Texans in 2021. Chris, I'll hand it over to you because I know you have a lot.
I'm going to interject one thing before Chris gets going because I know he's going to go for a while. The one thing that did actually kind of set me off this past weekend, it was when it said Deshaun Watson was going to veto any trade other than the Dolphins. So hopefully the Dolphins could have a lower trade offer, like they could get him below value, which absolutely infuriated me. It's like, not only do you want to leave the team when you are an asset that just can't be replaced. Like there is no return that is worth a Deshaun Watson without the allegations. There's no return. Like there's no amount of draft picks. There's not another player. Like you cannot make a fair trade for Deshaun. But the fact that he wants the Texans to just really hurt on the return on top of that, like, dude, come on, that's petty. That's just petty. I don't know. That just set me off for whatever reason.
Well, the thing is about the pettiness, and this is something that I don't think people really have thought too much about, and I put it out there yesterday and people loved it, but you want to get petty. You know who has the ultimate power and leverage to actually get ultra petty? Nick Caserio. You want to play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. It's just the way it works. And if you want to be petty, guess what we'll do? We'll let you sit for 5 years. We'll franchise you again, and we'll franchise you again. And you'll be 33, 34 by the time you can go to another team. This is a billionaire owner who would not care about wasting $134 million. And not only that, these owners don't want to see it happen anyways. So you got to think. Cal has more money, and Cal has all the rest of the owners on the same exact team that he's on. They don't want to see Deshaun be able to force his way out because this is not the NBA. And if that Pandora box gets open just once, right now it's cracked. It's not open. They tried to basically jam a key in and try to make it open. It's not. And it's not working. But if Pandora's box does open, it's going to change the entire dynamic of the NFL, and the owners don't want that. All right, Chris, the floor is yours, buddy.
I had to wet my whistle initially, pardon me.
I saw that.
So, one thing that people seem to forget is what it costs to actually move up in the draft itself to get a franchise quarterback, right? We've seen it throughout the years, the amount of picks, players, and the years of draft picks that are given up. So you got that factor. So now we're dealing with let's ignore the allegations and say we have a known commodity. We know what Deshaun can do. Yeah, can guys that watch quarterback play like me, you can kind of pick apart where he needs to improve, but we know what he is. We know at least have an idea of what his actual value is. So we are finally seeing the Patriot way. As much as people don't want to hear it, this is the Patriot way, not caving in to any specific player nor outsiders' demands. They're going to roll how they see fit. And this is the Patriot way. Look at what's going on right now with Stephon Gilmore, right? He wants either out or he wants more money. He's going to start the season on the PUP list, and they're still going to try to trade him. Probably, what's the trade deadline? Week 8, week 9?
9.
Yeah, so around there, we're probably going to see, Gilmore be moved. But yeah, we are finally seeing the Patriot way in New England South. But this past week, in regards to Deshaun, a couple things have come across my mind. And one thing is re-evaluating the statement made by his college head coach, Dabo Swinney, right? What did Dabo Swinney notoriously say Deshaun Watson was, gentlemen?
Michael Jordan.
The Michael Jordan of football. Now, that's an odd thing to say when you really break down and look on it. Maybe I'm thinking...
Well, and I'm a South Carolina fan, so defending Dabo is not something that I ever like to do. But he said that passing on Deshaun Watson was like passing on Michael Jordan. It was just unbelievable. He didn't actually call him the Michael Jordan of football. He said it was the same sort of mistake.
True.
Well, it was sort of you make a statement like that, you're kind of alluding to it, fair?
You're alluding that he's in that category. That if it's going to be that same sort of mistake, then he needs to be that quality of player.
And like I said, maybe I'm thinking too much about it. But look at Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players, if not the greatest basketball player of all time. Depends on your maturity level on where you see him ranking in the NBA greats, right? What about off the court? Is it fair to say that off the court, Michael Jordan was somewhat of a degenerate? Gambling problems, right? And then he's got people have problems with his labor practices for his Jordan brand and maybe involves child labor or whatnot, whatever your thoughts on that are. I'm just saying, it kind of makes a little more sense. Deshaun's a great football player. As a person, it's looking like he's not so great. Now, I'm not saying that's a fire take or nothing, but that's just something that's been sitting in my mind that makes sense, Michael Jordan. So, there's still people that can't believe that Deshaun Watson did this or he's guilty, and it's all a big cash grab, right? Well, now, keep track. It's going to sound like I'm getting a little bit off topic, but just everyone keep track how I'm going to sort of tie this in. Ron Jeremy, known adult film star, recently indicted on 34 counts of sex crimes. 21 women over 20 years, ages 15 to 51. This is a guy that gets paid and hand-delivered to essentially have his way with women. And now he's indicted on 31 cases. Is it really hard to believe that this amount of women are accusing Deshaun and that it's still a money grab in some's opinion? At this point, do you two still think it's a money grab?
No, I never. At first, because of Deshaun's character and pedigree that has been built up and the image that he's definitely had manufactured. I thought there was a chance, but after just thinking about it more and more, it would be too easy to prove if this was a money grab. and that hasn't been the case yet. So, no, I don't think it's a money grab.
And I mean, everything that's happened from the accuser standpoints are kind of textbook for women in this situation, dealing with somebody that's like a boss or a star, or somebody that's in a power position. From the start, me and James actually had that conversation because, honestly, even me too. Like, I wanted it to be a money grab. Like, you don't want to believe these things about Deshaun. But as I prefaced at that time, if you've studied anything about sexual harassment, just for whatever reason, like being a manager or whatnot, then the checkboxes for these accusations were all checked. Like, it was just, you can't say it's textbook because the things that they're doing to some people would seem like, oh, that must mean that they're innocent. But when you actually get deep into it, a lot of the issues that they had reporting Deshaun, even the one lady that tried to get back with Deshaun, like, those are the types of patterns that actually do show up in actual cases that have been proven. So unfortunately, it's like, I can't believe it's a money grab. I mean, even to this day, I still want to. Like, you don't want to believe that somebody was capable of this, especially somebody that you look up to. But if you actually look at the facts, read the statements, like, it really doesn't look good for Deshaun. And even at best, he was soliciting over Instagram. Even that's best case. Like, that's not good.
And recently, they've also mentioned that no one seems to be talking about is now there's 2 actually criminal charges from 2 women added to the 22, correct? So
yes, there's 2 additional women that have.
And you know what? It could be those 2 that bring them down and not the 22. The 22 could all just settle out, and it could be these 2, the criminal charges, that ultimately lead to his demise. But
I mean, it's.
Well, we'll find out about the criminal stuff, I think, by October 30th, right? Or something like that.
Are we going to find out in October?
That was something that popped up in chat. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to. I honestly don't know. And part of me thinks that Deshaun's going to get off essentially scot-free. Like, he's going to pay it off. Things are going to go away. He's going to end up without any, like, legal issues. Like, that's going to get smoothed over, but this is going to be forever on his resume, and I don't understand how people are comfortable with that.
And that's what I was going to mention next is now we're at a point to where people are saying, Deshaun Watson, I can separate the football player from the person. Now, before I continue, I just want to say I'm a fairly open-minded person. I really don't care if someone has different views. My issues begin when you start involving children and animals because they ultimately can't defend themselves one bit, right? And so you got people that are willing to say, well, and I seen this on Twitter that someone overheard someone say, even if he molested my own daughter, I would still support Deshaun because he scores touchdowns on Sunday. Even the goofball in Stafford guy, him and his other cronies are like, yeah, man, people need to separate the football player from the person, and I can do that. Well, you're essentially okay with someone being a sexual assaulter of women, a sexual predator, a possible, even I won't even say the word, but a straight up degenerate, and you're okay with it because I'll holla, he scores touchdowns on Sunday. You know how much of a jerk off you sound? That lets me know what kind of person you truly are. And then people like that, they allow on the radio, but they think they're loved on the radio. But the radio hosts and stuff, they allow people like that because they draw ratings, because they say dumb shit. These guys on the radio, you should hear what they say about these clowns that are like, I could separate the person, he could rape my daughter, but as long as he wins on Sunday, go ahead. And it's disgusting.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to say this, but I can sympathize with where they're coming from. Like,
I'm not trying to go.
There's like, I see where they want. Like, all of us, like, honestly, like, me and James do a podcast for an hour and a half every week. Like, we care about the Texans. Like, we are invested in them. We've spent close to 20 years wanting this team to win. You want a quarterback from a skill level like Deshaun. We finally had that hope. It is so rare to get a quarterback like that in your lifetime. Like, a lot of franchises don't get that. So I can absolutely see why they have that disbelief. Like, I'm not, and I get it, because you want that. But I mean, come on, you've got to have some common sense when it comes to all this.
Sympathy. I can have sympathy for the people that are heartbroken just by hearing this news. And I'm sure some people from the jump, I was the same way. I'm sure you two were. I don't want to believe it. But then when you use your brain, you see that it starts making sense. But then these guys, they get to the point that they're so warped in it. They're like, well, he could, rape my daughter, but go out and win my team. I'll holla, I'm the coolest guy in Houston. No, you're not. You're a sicko. People need to stop that, or at least stop publicly stating that.
I think I think a lot of times fans tend to be a little bit more emotional than they should be when it comes to their fandom and things of that nature. I think a lot of times fans will create a competition internally with themselves and other fans to try to look and be perceived as being a bigger fan than somebody. So they'll use whatever it may be to actually win said competition. Now, I get what you're saying to the extent, like, if anybody actually said that they'd be okay with that, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty pathetic and sad.
I don't know,
understand,
but go through his profile. Not to cut you off. Go through his stuff. I'll you know what? I got a Rolodex on that cat. I got some stuff I can just DM you, that all the craziness I see. Not just him specifically, a bunch of people.
sure. But I don't agree with that. That's wild. But I can't sit here and say anything, because Kobe Bryant's my favorite basketball player all time. Okay, and I was able to separate at that time in Utah, or I mean in Colorado, when he was going through what he was going through. I cared less about the off-court stuff and only cared about what he brought when he performed. And I was young, I was immature. I think I'd probably be a little bit different now, but I totally, at that time, if he brought me a ring, I cared about the player. I didn't care about the person.
Well, let me ask you this. Was Kobe ever found guilty?
No.
So there you go. That's one of the big difference makers for me.
But Deshaun hasn't yet either.
It's all, well, yeah, sure. I'm just saying though, it's all speculation, And I'm not saying that victims should be forgotten about, and one is more worth paying attention to than the other. But if I punch one person in the face, no one's going to care. I punch 22 people in the face in one sitting, people are going to pay more attention.
I would tell you. Yeah, and I would tell you, don't do that. But unless you have to.
I think you also, I also think you nailed it last week when you were kind of talking about it, the difference between the Kobe situation and the Deshaun situation. Like, with Kobe, you never felt like who knows if his apology was genuine or whatnot, but you never felt like he gave up on the team.
Yeah, I think we need to move past this part of it a little bit, just because I think some of our listeners are getting to a point they don't want to hear rape and things of that nature. But I will say,
my apologies.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
How about people actually thinking that Cam Newton should be a Texan? There you go.
Yeah, I don't think Cam Newton should be a Texan, and that's how much time we'll spend on that either, as well. Let's talk about Deshaun, the football player. How do they move? How do they move forward? What do they do? He, according to the CBA, he can only be a healthy and active 4 weeks. After that, technically, Deshaun can file a grievance against the team to be able to force him to play or force him to be active. Now, I've seen that argument, but that to me then says that Deshaun is willing to play if he's willing to file a grievance, right? So he would only file a grievance if he wants to play for the Texans. So
I think that this whole sitting him thing, part of it is mutual. And if you read it, it says it can only be used as punishment. I mean, are the Texans really punishing him? He doesn't want to play, so they're just not letting him play. Like, he asked out. It's not that they're punishing him. He asked off the team. So they're just...
Yeah.
I think what needs to be remembered is Nick Casario's tutelage is under Bill Belichick, right? And while they don't always have the best records in football, most Bill Belichick disciples know the rule book. So I can see game day trickery on a week-to-week basis. 1 week he's inactive. 1 week he's a backup. He's on the bench. And I think Caserio and Culley will do whatever they can to navigate that game. Because maybe, what's the rule say? Is it a total of X amount of games?
A total of 4 weeks. I don't know if it's consecutive or if it's just 4 weeks. So honestly, I can't speak to what that is. But
is it something that's only like you can't do it 4 weeks in a row? So say they do it 3 weeks, have him as a backup for 2, then he's on the list again for another 3.
John, do you know?
I think it says 4 weeks, so they can only be punished for 4 weeks. Like, that's part of it, like the punishment portion. So again, it just kind of goes back to, if Deshaun isn't ready to play, then he's not being punished.
Yeah.
If Deshaun is showing up wanting to play, that's when he can file a grievance. And I know that's probably a little bit of gray area lawyery, but I mean, I don't think that that's going to amount to anything. Like, if Deshaun wants to play, then they'll suit him up and they'll go from there. But
if Deshaun does somehow want to play, he should have to wear number 22. That's hilarious. All right, so what do we think happens? Do we think I guess we'll make it somewhat short so we can get to the roster. But John, do you think that Deshaun plays for the Texans in 2021?
I hate to say that it's still a possibility, but it's still a possibility. Like, I hate to say that. Particularly because he's taking up a roster spot. I think we'll find out pretty soon here with how the inactives go. Like, what happens when Tyrod gets hurt? Because Davis Mills isn't ready to play, and Tyrod's gonna get hurt. So what happens then? Or what happens if Tyrod gets hurt and then Davis gets hurt? Like, what happens at that point? So, and supposedly Deshaun wants to play. Like, he doesn't want to play for the Texans, but he actually does want to play. So maybe watching everybody go out there and play will drive him insane, and he'll get out there and get his act together. But I don't know. At this point, the only thing that I can confidently say is I don't think Nick's going to get screwed over on a trade.
Yeah.
But whether or not Deshaun is eligible to be traded is up in the air. Whether or not Deshaun stays off the exempt list is up in the air. Like, there's so many things that this is just, no one's been through a situation like this. Like, we're trying to figure out the psychology of somebody that we were all completely wrong on. Like, we were already wrong on him. So,
but John, will he play this year? Yes or no?
I can't answer that.
Yes, you can. Your thoughts. You can give your thoughts. That's what we do. So, will he play? Yes or no?
Yes, I think we might actually see him play.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna take the devil's advocate position on this. I think that yes.
I'm gonna try to keep it short. I'm sticking to my guns. He never takes an actual game day snap at football ever again in his career. I got to ride or die with it. Worst case, some guy on, some stranger says you were wrong. But I will say, I think we're gonna see some game day trickery within the rules on how Deshaun is utilized. And in the case that, say, Tyrod does get hurt, don't think for a second they won't just put him on IR and get some random guy off the street.
Yeah, I think that's what would
Well, it's
happen,
only 3. I mean, it's only 3 weeks now. So, I mean, that's not too bad. But, I mean, I think that there's just as much of a chance of him playing this year as him not ever playing again. Like, it's right there.
That's fair.
Like, those are both within the realm of possibility this year. It's already been nuts. Like, of course, it can be anything and everything.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think he plays this year though. I think he's being petty, and I think he can outmatch. He thinks he can outmatch Nick's petty and Coley's petty, and I think he's going to be served a pretty nice size slice of humble pie. As I don't think that they're going to just let him. Look, you got to remember this guy shitted on the entire organization for 6 months leading up to this point, or 8 months now. Okay, he used his camp as leverage for all the things in SI. Let the Easterby stories get written. Amy did her job and smashed whatever was going on with the organization and told all these other stories and things of that nature. All of this is all the whole thing that's happening right now. It's not like he handled it like Aaron Rodgers. It's not like he just didn't show up to camp. I mean, he hasn't been. I'll tell you this: he's a big. In my mind, I think Deshaun's a pussy, 100%. I think the fact that he hides behind everything and isn't willing to have a conversation says a lot more about his character than anything else that has actually happened so far during this entire process. Because if I was Deshaun Watson and I had the platform I had, and I had David as my agent that can leverage the other platforms that could possibly be used, I would be telling my side of the story, whether it be honestly, I'd probably set up a one-on-one interview for game day on ESPN or Fox or one of those sit-down shows that does the kickoff countdown, and I'd have a 30-minute conversation about what happened and what's been going on and why I don't want to play for this team anymore. That's what I would do. But he's too big of a pussy to actually do it. And that to me tells me everything about who Deshaun Watson actually is. He is not a high character guy. He's a guy that runs and hides and doesn't actually face the obstacles and hurdles that are in his life. And this is one of the biggest ones that he could potentially ever face. And he's not willing to face it, man, as a man, right in front of me. Here's how I'm going to handle it. And to me, that's why we're still in this mess, is because he's a pussy. And I tell him that to his face. All right. Let's get to cut down. So the roster has been trimmed to 53. Let's start with surprise cuts. Do you have John, do you have any takes on surprise cuts or anything like that?
Not really. I know that Jordan, Texans Thoughts, was really upset about Thomas, Joe Thomas.
Yeah, Joe Thomas and Jaleel Johnson, I think,
and Jaleel Johnson. Jaleel Johnson, I get, but there was so much competition on the D line that, I mean, I was still a little bit surprised because he looked pretty good. But we just had so many vets around the same level. Like, that's what they did, and they did that on purpose. That we weren't going to get a good feel for it from camp. And it seems that they've stuck to their guns on that. However, there are some things that obviously point out to Nick Caserio is definitely not done with the roster. And I think the next couple of days will actually be very telling.
Yeah. What about you, Otto? Any surprise cuts that you kind of like, I kind of wish we would have kept this guy?
I was starting to think that they were never going to cut, Kiki Kuti, who Texans fans have like adopted as their love child for some reason. I don't see it. Maybe it's love for Texas Tech. They believe Wes Welker's word and reports about him. I don't know. The guy's unreliable. Yeah, he's caught a ball.
I mean, somebody tweeted it out. I want to say that it was Aaron Reese, but he was pointing out some of the stats. Like,
he's like 8th in longest average reception as a slot receiver for the last
8th
4 years.
As an ADOT, 8th and ADOT, where Anthony Miller was 15th, and then first in catch percentage at 74%.
But when you don't have the targets, like that's one of those ratio things that if you don't have the targets, like of course your stats are going to be inflated a little bit. Like when you're not available on Sunday to have balls thrown to you, like how are you supposed to actually have a different statistic, right? So, and if you look at the 2 games against the Colts alone, the 2 games I did an AFC South podcast earlier, like the 2 games against the Colts, he had 22 catches and like 197 yards, right? So that alone right there is 9.7 yards per catch. So I mean, I get the infatuation with Kiki though, Chris. He had games like he did against the Colts where you were like, okay, he can actually be productive. But then, those are the only time we actually saw it. We didn't ever see it again.
Too much of a roller coaster player for my liking. I'm not a fan of wide receivers under 6 foot, anyways. Just naturally, I don't like the small guys. It's weird. I know. But if you never heard that quote from Aaron Reese, 75% catch rate and all that jazz, you would have never thought about that. That never would have came to your mind.
True.
You know what I mean? It's not even something that, and like you were saying, it's probably an inflated stat because of the limited balls that have been thrown his way.
Yeah, I would agree.
Nothing really.
No, I was just going to point out that this is now 2 coaching staffs that he's gotten in the doghouse with. So everybody always blamed it on BLB. He was in BLB's doghouse. Well, as soon as we get a new coach in, he's still in the doghouse. So there's something else going on there. And then you could also see during games, you could seeing him how he was acting towards Mills, when there were some throws that were off target, that Davis Mills was throwing the ball to the wrong spot, whereas Kiki might have been running the wrong route. You could see there was a disconnect there, which was always the big complaint with Kiki, was he wasn't running the right routes. And you can see that he just didn't improve.
Yeah. But outside of Kiki, I mean, I wish there was a way to get rid of Whitney Merciless. I mean, if anything, he should be on a team trying to get a ring as a 3rd or 4th pass rusher, a rotational guy. That and people are going to hate me for this, Scotty Phillips. I just don't see it. I see a guy, if you need 3 yards, he can get you 3 yards. That's it. I don't see a guy that, you need 3, but he can just happen to get you 4.5, 5 yards plus.
That's all here's the thing about preseason.
Here's the thing about
10, 11.
Here's the thing about Scotty Phillips is he's a slightly above average, slightly above replacement level running back. Now, he's not going to be a star, but he's going to go out there and he's going to get yards and he's going to be able to fill in. And he's an NFL player. He belongs on an NFL roster. Now, it's one of those things. It's are people being infatuated with that? Or this guy's an NFL caliber back. He's got youth, where every other running back on the roster is ancient. He's the only young guy. How many do we have that are at 30 or above 30? I think 3 of the 5. Because Ingram and Burkhead both are over 30. David Johnson's 29, or is he turned 30 this year?
30.
And then, Philip Lindsay's the young one, but I think he's 27, 28.
Yeah.
Scotty Phillips is 24, 25. In that age range. So he's got a little bit of youth. He's got a little bit of juice. Who knows if he's going to be a star, but he definitely belongs on an NFL roster. And I'm definitely not upset that he's on the roster.
Well, to piggyback off of what you're saying, I don't have a problem. I don't hate that he's still on the roster. However, I think he's a guy you're constantly looking to replace. If you could find someone better than what he's good enough to make a team. Absolutely. Can't deny that. But you're constantly looking to upgrade him.
Yeah, I think for me, to kind of counter argue, if he'll get you 3 yards every time. If that was the case, that'd be a touchdown on every drive. So you really need a guy that can actually get you 3 yards when you need it. Because if you look at last season, or hell, if you look at the first preseason game, if you didn't have 3 yards, you weren't getting a first down. If a lot of times with David Johnson in the power set, if you were running up in I formation or on a power run, he was getting stuffed at the 1, right? So, he wasn't able to get that extra yard. So I'll take Scotty getting us 2 or 3 in short yardage over trying to do it again with David Johnson, to be honest with you.
Fair.
And to be honest, they're not going to keep 5 running backs. Something's going to happen.
They're either waiting for a corner or a wide receiver, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if Rex is gone next, but then I don't know about maybe David, honestly. But I don't know who it'll be. I don't think it'll be Scotty. I think they'll keep the youth. Maybe the Ravens trade a 7th or a 6th for Mark Ingram or something of that nature. But I don't it's going to be a corner or a wide receiver. There's no way we're only going in with 5 wide receivers and one of them being a special teams returner. I just can't see it. Who we calling? Who are we going to call as the drop?
Who am I calling as a drop?
Yeah, one of the running backs.
I'd have to go with you got to get rid of David Johnson.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, Javier and Patrick Storm put it out best that, Rex Burkhead can pretty much do the same thing that David Johnson brings you. I can't see Ingram going back to the Ravens. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they end on like bad terms?
I don't know if they ended on bad terms, but they did end. Right? It was like week 10 or 11 last year, right? It was pretty late in the season that he was let go.
Yeah, something odd, but yeah, I got to say David Johnson. They're going to have a couple. They're going to have some Patriot way guys like Rex Burkhead just to keep in everyone's head on how things are supposed to go.
Yeah,
I mean, I would also counter with that. Not that I disagree, but not just the Patriots way, but Rex Burkhead contributes on special teams and David Johnson does not.
Yeah,
I have seen something floated around that David Johnson. What if he ends up being more of a slot receiver? Because all of a sudden that position is thin.
Well, he's not a very good route runner, so I don't know if that would work out. But the surprise for me is Julio Johnson, though. Just to kind of finish that part up, I thought he showed a ton in preseason. I also think he's the most experienced guy we have at defensive tackle. Started all 16 games last year with the Vikings. Not a huge stat guy. But definitely, he's shown a ton of flashes of preseason. They had a couple quarterback pressures. I think he had 2 fumble recoveries in one game. I was kind of surprised to see that, but to be honest, I don't want to say we're deep because I've been hearing that. Today was the first time I turned on Sports Radio 610, and I heard that we're deep at that position. I don't really like that word because when you say that you're deep at that position, that means that you have 3 or 4 really good players at that position. I would say we probably have average to maybe above average players at that position, so I wouldn't necessarily call it deep. Outside of that, when you're looking at the roster and the final roster here, let me go through it so that way we can kind of make sure that we all kind of stay on the right path here. Oh, I had it pulled up. Where'd it go? There it is. All right. So starting at quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, Davis Mills, Deshaun Watson. Running back, Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay, David Johnson, Rex Burkhead, Scotty Phillips. At wide receiver, they kept Brandon Cooks, Chris Conley, Nico Collins, Anthony Miller, and Andre Roberts. Any surprises with the wide receivers, Chris Moore or VC or Erickson not making the team?
A little bit, to tell you the truth. We went 5 receivers with Andre Roberts doesn't actually ever line up at receiver. So we really have 4 receivers. And if we do 3 receiver sets, that means we have 1 extra receiver. That's a little bit surprising. I don't think that's going to stay static. There's going to be a change there.
Okay. What about you, Chris? Anything about the 5 wide receivers we kept and letting Chris Moore, VC, and Erickson go? Any surprises?
I'm not surprised by the Erickson move. I am surprised to the fact that everything that was reported was I won't say he was phenomenal, but he was one of the most consistent guys out there. And for a guy like that not to make the roster, but the fact that the guy was on the Texans in the first place compared to another team, if he was that good, I think he probably would have been on a better team from the jump.
Okay. That's fair. All right. Tight ends. I was wrong. I missed completely. I really thought Akins could be flipped, but they kept the 3 best tight ends on the roster. I have 0 complaints about the tight end group. Jordan Akins, Pharaoh Brown, Brevin Jordan. Anything on the tight ends, guys? I really think it's pretty cut and dry.
I mean, I'm a little bit surprised by Auclair not making it because he did such a good job blocking. However, this could be part of the reason why they only went with essentially 4 receivers. Two of their tight ends are essentially receivers.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Offensive line: Laramie Tunsil, Titus Howard, Justin Britt, Max Sharping, Charlie Heck, Jerron Christian, Justin McCray, and Marcus Cannon. Taylor Lane, cut. A veteran guard. Outside of that, really this offensive line group, it kind of is what it is. I mean, Chris, how are you feeling about the offensive line?
I tell you what, the Lane Taylor cut kind of threw me off guard. That wasn't a one I was expecting, but I mean, Titus Howard looked like a monster at left guard. What was it, his rookie year? He started week 1 there.
Yep.
He looked phenomenal. So I'm okay with it. And as long as he's not one of those players that's like secretly disgruntled, and he's one of those, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I look, the left side of the line, I'm not worried about it in any form or fashion. Laramie, Titus, Justin make me feel a lot better. I don't know why we couldn't just put Titus at right guard and Max back at left to give Max some a little bit more time to develop. But I guess if you're playing guard, you're playing guard. It's not like playing right tackle or left tackle. So hopefully Sharping can get it together. Charlie Heck, up and down preseason. I don't necessarily think that he had the preseason that the media made him out to be. In games, the bull rush always seems to be a problem for him. So the power pass rushers tend to give him a little bit of an issue. His feet need some work. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive with his hands and also just being able to dig in with his stance. But, 6th round guy now starting right tackle. I don't know. I don't really know. The only reason I have a problem with it is because Max is at right guard. If it was, I'd rather see Cannon at right tackle next to Max Sharping, as I think that would go a long way. And with Marcus Cannon practicing today, maybe that's where we go. I don't know. What are your thoughts, John, on the offensive line?
I mean, I have no complaints with it. I'm a little bit. I mean, we're all in the same boat. It's like, why is Titus Howard playing guard? But other than that, I mean, it's going to be a better offensive line than last year. Like, even with Howard at guard, Marcus Cannon and Charlie Heck are both question marks. Cannon, of course, because of his health. If he's healthy, then our offensive line is way better than last year. Heck, yeah, he's improved over last year, but I mean, when you watched him play last year, anything would have been an improvement. And part of it was like, I mean, they didn't have a camp, but he didn't quite look like an NFL lineman last year. Now all of a sudden he could possibly be our starting right tackle. I don't think he improved that much, but I still think overall the line's going to be better this year than it was last year.
I do too. I think the line's going to be better once Cannon's back. That's really what I'm looking for. I know a lot of people don't like him at right tackle. Jordan specifically isn't a big fan of him, but I'd rather at least see him at right tackle next to Sharping, or put him at right guard next to Charlie Heck, so you can develop Charlie a little bit better. Defensive line: Whitney Merciless, Malik Collins, Vincent Taylor, Charles Omenihu, Jordan Jenkins, Roy Lopez, Jonathan Grenard, DeMarcus Walker, Jacob Martin, and Ross Blacklock. This defensive line has me somewhat excited. I'll be 100% honest. I really like the approach to the way that they built this defensive line. They brought in a ton of guys to compete. One of the things I'll say is when training camp started, competition was the buzzword, and it really pissed a lot of people off for some reason. I really can't seem to understand why people were mad about the competition aspect of camp. Maybe they didn't believe it, but it looks to me like, based on what we've seen in preseason and some of the things at training camp, I think the only two snubs are Jaleel and Joe. But I think they wanted to see their younger guys develop. I think that Garrett Wallow was probably on the bubble over Joe Thomas, and I think that's why they probably went with Garrett Wallow, was they drafted him and they saw something in him. And then same thing with Roy Lopez and Jaleel Johnson. But I like this defensive line. I really like the way they approached it. This is a complete overhaul. You literally have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 new players on the defensive line that you didn't have last season. I'm hoping we don't see a ton of Whitney Merciless, or I'm hoping we see some Whitney Merciless that we haven't seen in 2 or 3 years. Likely outcome is that we don't see a lot of Whitney Merciless. But, John, I feel really good about this defensive line, dude.
Yeah, I do too. When it's really the only person that I'm concerned about is Whitney Merciless, like, I think that's a pretty good feeling. Like, other than Merck, I believe the Texans actually did stick pretty much to their guns on competition. I think that you're right that there was probably like some tiebreakers with like Garrett Wallow and Joe Thomas, or Wallow's younger, and they think that he can possibly that he can improve. But I mean, Merck, really? Um, he didn't show anything during the preseason. He didn't show anything last year. I can't imagine that his camp was great. But I mean, I guess they paid him. But we've already got the most dead money. Like, does it matter at this point?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Chris, what are your thoughts on the defensive line?
I like it. You know, I hope it's one of those things where a lot of your good Super Bowl teams had solid rotations. Kansas City comes to recently. The Giants, when they went on their Super Bowl run, when no one expected them to, had a consistent rotation. The Eagles, they had a consistent rotation. So I like the idea. And, maybe Merciless is just merely a spot duty guy where every 3 or 4 drives, he's out there for just a play or two.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to have the rotational pieces on the defensive line. Like, that's just the way the NFL works. It's one of the things that we've been screaming for the last 5 to 6 years is that bottom part of the roster. You need to have some guys that can come in and play some snaps and be effective. And that's where we've lacked during the Bill O'Brien era. So, the DeMarcus Walkers, the Jordan Jenkins, things of that nature, being able to see Jacob Martin get some more play time, Jonathan Grenard develop, Ross Blacklock. I'm very confident in the defensive line. Like I said, I don't expect one player to have over 10 sacks, but you should see a very strong team effort here on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, somebody just put it in chat. Let's see if I can find it. But there we go. Ryan did. Ryan always makes good points. He says, doesn't let the players get gassed. And it's like, yeah, our defensive line is going to be relentless this year just because they rotate through them. Like above average defensive linemen that are constantly rotated will be better than a above average line or defensive lineman that never gets rotated. So that's the one thing that we'll have going for us this year.
What I will add is, the whole idea of competition, is taboo. It's going to motivate the guys, at least from a pass rush perspective, because they're going to challenge each other. And they're probably going to have wagers amongst themselves on who's going to get the highest amount of sacks, who's going to get a sack during the game. I'm sure they got more incentive to actually show out this year.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that these guys are motivated, and I definitely think a lot of these guys, like the Malik Collins, Jordan Jenkins, they have an opportunity to make some money after this season, and that's one of the reasons why these one-year deals really tend to sometimes really work out. And I've been screaming it since the free agency. Your goal is to hit on 2 to 4 of these one-year guys that are younger by taking a chance on them, because it's kind of like having a draft pick, right? You sign a guy for $6 million, he comes in and outperforms that contract. You're able to have contract extension conversations in the middle of the season before he hits free agency, and you're able to sign him to an extension to where you add a player to your team that is valuable, that's going to bring forth the effort you're looking for. That's why I really like the fact that we did do this, and Nick went in that approach free agency in that manner. All right, let's get to linebackers. We have Zach Cunningham, who we didn't see much of preseason. I think we only saw him one game. Christian Kirksey, Camus Grugler-Hill, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Neville Hewitt, and Garrett Wallow. Honestly, I like this linebacking core. Do I agree with Jordan on Joe Thomas? I do. Especially on third down. I think it would make a lot of sense to have a guy who can cover. Zach has shown us he can't cover. I don't think he's ever going to develop into being a coverage linebacker. Kevin Pierre-Louis is decent. Christian Kirksey isn't fast enough. If you look at all the passes thrown his way across the middle, he was always a step or two behind to break them up. Neville Hewitt, I guess we'll see. But I feel pretty good about this linebacking core, to be honest.
I mean, it's the same complaints we could say every year about our linebacking core. We don't have a coverage linebacker. I mean, the hope is Garrett Wallow develops into that. He's a converted safety, as is. Kevin Pierre-Louis has the speed to do it. So there's a couple of guys that could potentially do it, but that is going to be a weakness this year. And Lovie Smith's scheme, that can be like an Achilles heel. Like you get a quarterback with a decent arm strength and that's accurate, a la Tom Brady. Like they can just carve us up. Which is, it's going to be interesting to see because this defense and the scheme's really good at quarterbacks that are inaccurate. Just look what we did to every backup. But these guys that are starters are usually a little bit more accurate. So it's going to be scary.
Yeah. How do you feel about this linebacking core, Chris?
This is probably the most boring group. And I'm always saying that is because none of them are like superstar players. They're just, it's a lot of solid guys that are just going to do their job, and that's it. What I'm really interested in seeing is how has Lovie Smith's system, has it grown any? Is he going to rotate a guy like John alluded to, Garrett Wallow? He's that safety linebacker hybrid. Maybe you have 5 safeties currently on a roster. Unless you're trading them, are you going to drop Lonnie Johnson down on, say, a passing down?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, like I said, it's not the sexiest looking linebacking core, but I think you're right. Like it's enough to get the job done, do their job. You got a young guy in Garrett Wallow. You have Zach Cunningham, who's still also young, only on I think only his second year of his contract. He signed it last year, so you have to hope that he's going to step up in a way. And then I like Kevin Pierre-Louis, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. All right, cornerbacks. This is where I think the concern will probably start to kind of come in a little bit. Bradley Roby, Terrence Mitchell, Vernon Hargreaves, Desmond King, Tremont Smith, and Tevier Thomas. Roby will be out week 1, so it looks like we're going Terrence Mitchell, Vernon Hargreaves, Desmond King, and then Tremont Smith and Tevier Thomas. I don't know enough about Smith and Thomas. I know Smith had a pretty decent preseason. Mitchell seemed to be up and down. We know what we have in Vernon Hargreaves. I'd like to see more from Desmond King, or I'd like to see better play from Desmond King. But I mean, overall, once Roby comes back, Roby and Mitchell and King should be your 3 corners. I'm okay with it. But I honestly, we need to find another corner on the waiver wire. John, what are your thoughts?
I mean, Vernon Hargreaves, my opinion on him is pretty clear. Like, I think that they can go out and find just about any of these people that were released and give them a better chance. But for whatever reason, the staff sees something in them. They kept him on the roster again, so we will see. I'm a little bit concerned about Desmond King. Granted, it's a preseason game, but he was picked on.
Yeah.
And he did not look good at all. It was almost like they were looking for him. And part of that is the way the scheme is. He really didn't have help where they were running the routes to. But still, you kind of rely on him to do a lot. And that just didn't look good.
Yeah, I would agree. What are your thoughts on this cornerback group, Chris?
I don't think we've seen its final incarnation this season. I think we're at a point to where we're probably going to see maybe a Desmond Trufant or Isaiah Johnson picked up. I really don't think they're going to trade for anyone, but I think their play is going to be highly predicated from the front 7 this year. When the front 7 sucks, they're going to suck. When the front 7's balling, they're going to be balling. I don't think it's going to be one to where the front 7's great and then the back end stinks or vice versa. I think they're going to, as one unit's going to gel, it's either going to be real high or real low.
Yeah, I agree. It's something I've been screaming for, since this podcast started. We haven't really had a strong we haven't had the strongest secondary, and
not from a talent perspective. A lot of it goes back to J.J. Watt doing whatever the he wants. Because that's what people forget. When you got a guy like J.J. Watt doing what he wanted, everyone else has to do their job plus cover down. So maybe it wasn't necessarily talent. Maybe it was just, Captain, I do whatever I want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've talked about that here too. I mean, the gap responsibilities and the assignments and things of that nature that he was giving up definitely doesn't help. But I do think that the pass rush is going to be it's just the way it works. They go hand in hand. If your pass rush is working, your secondary is going to be better. If your pass rush isn't working, your secondary is going to be worse. It's just the way that football works. All right, let's get to safeties. Justin Reed, Eric Murray, Lonnie Johnson, AJ Moore, Terrence Brooks. No surprises here. Terrence Brooks had a very strong preseason. I'm glad he made the team. This is a guy that should have made the team based on what we've seen. I love AJ Moore. I think anybody that listens to me knows I love AJ Moore. I'd like to see him more. No play on words there, but I wouldn't mind seeing him and Lonnie switch off a little bit at safety and pair him with Justin Reed. I think that they'd make a good little tandem. And then Eric Murray, we didn't see a ton of him at safety last year. We saw him a lot in the slot. So maybe he'll be able to cover tight ends or something of that nature, or running backs out of the backfield. But I mean, overall, the safety group, Justin Reed is a star. I'm hoping he can continue to be a star and look like his rookie self. He looks to be a little bit more free. Excuse me. It looks like he's not thinking as much, which is what you want from him. But John, I feel pretty good about the safety group.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Reed seems very excited about the scheme. If he's excited and he's playing free, like he has such a high ceiling. And then Lonnie Johnson has a level of athleticism and just a mentality that I think that he's pretty solid, that he's going to end up being a pretty solid safety. Is there room for improvement? Yeah. But overall, like, they're not our weakest position group. Like, they're not any surprises. I hope that Brooks can continue to have a regular season like he did, like the preseason. And then I think that they'll be okay.
Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts on the safeties?
Similar to the defensive line, I think this is going to be a group that's rotated heavily. And I also think, just like with the pass rush, they're going to challenge each other on a weekly basis. And that's the one group that's going to play at a high level all year long.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that. And safeties are such an important piece in a Lovie Smith defense, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they're utilized. Lovie's always been a rotational guy at safety, so it'll be fun to watch and see if that's something that he takes here as well. All right, what else do we have? John, do you have anything else before we really end this podcast? And then next week, we are literally, when we record Tuesday, 5 days away from the Texans opener against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll be able to literally have a conversation about a matchup that will be happening next Sunday.
We're almost there, almost through the worst offseason in NFL history. However, just one question. Can you think of anybody that was cut that you would love the Texans to bring on? And let's try and keep this kind of short.
Honestly, I haven't paid enough of attention to see who it was. I know there's a couple corners out there that would be interesting, some young guys. The Fulgham guy from Philly would be an interesting wide receiver pickup. Outside of that, that's really all I know. I've been pretty busy today, so I wasn't able to actually watch. Beige is 100% right. I totally left off our special teams unit. John Weeks, Kaimi Fairbairn, and Cameron Johnston. Cameron Johnston looks like he has a metal boot on the end of his foot because all he does is punt and punt long and hard. Anything else? I mean, the guy.
I mean,
flipping,
you nailed it.
Flipping the position on the field is such a underrated aspect of football that people don't tend to talk enough about. If you have a punter that you can be on the 25 or 30 and switch field positions. I mean, dude, all that does is help put your defense in a better position. Oh yeah, John Brown was released as well. But yeah,
do you want John Brown?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I like John Brown. He's fast. He's had some up and down years, but it'd be interesting to see with him, but not with Tyrod Taylor. No.
Would you rather have Tyron Johnson come back?
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Okay.
What else?
Kind of curious about Isaiah Johnson. I want to know why he didn't work out in Las Vegas. He was a guy that we were very, very high on coming into that draft 2 years ago.
Yep.
Was it? It was just 2 years ago. So he's pretty much the guy that I that you didn't mention that I'd like to take a look at. Definitely agree about Travis Fulgham, and we'll kind of see. There was according to Pat and there were other national sources, we were really close to signing John Brown. He ended up going to the Raiders because he thought he had the team was better. But now that he's been cut, he might come here. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else, Chris? Anything you want to close with?
Yeah. I already tipped my hat with Desmond Trufant and Isaiah Johnson. Kick the wheels on them. Part of me wants to say John Ross, but he is who he is at this point. So yeah. But with Isaiah Johnson and John Brown, real quick, the Raiders do not know what they're doing, especially if that report's true that Gruden was willing to trade back for Khalil Mack. Yeah, they don't know what they're doing out there.
Yeah, I would agree. Anybody that the Raiders cut, I'd be interested in because I don't believe that they actually have an understanding of what they're building over there with Mike Mayock. And that team is just it's just a weird thing. And yes, Greg, Anthony Miller did make the team. He just wasn't on the roster that I was looking at because I think they put him on designated IR or are going to. Yeah, that's Desmond Trufant would be interesting because he's been an average corner that has a ton of, his draft, where he was drafted, the tenure he had in Atlanta, the contract that he signed. But he's probably, if you sign Desmond Trufant, he's definitely your second best corner. And that'd be interesting to see a guy like him come in on a 1-year deal, and you play him opposite of Roby. Could be a pretty decent upgrade. I mean, he's not great, but he is above average.
Yeah, I don't know what his issue is. I know he got cut. Something happened where something happened with his family and he just didn't show back up, but he has stated that he still wants to play football.
Yeah, that's what I saw as well. So yeah. All right.
He was on bereavement for the entire training camp.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. But who knows what happened? I don't want to judge.
Reason?
You never know.
Wasn't a family member passed away?
Yeah,
I believe it was his father. And he was on bereavement the entire time.
There you go. That is it. I mean,
that hurts everybody differently and how they deal with it. You just never know. I know if my dad died, it'd be a while for me to actually get back to work and grind, to be honest with you. Sorry, my daughter wanted to give me kisses tonight. Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, Chris, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I apologize to everyone for my mini rant that kind of side railed this podcast time.
It's okay. Good thing is it's only on YouTube. We can edit it out for the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, John, with that being said, we're out of here. Texans Unfiltered. I'm Young Ari Gold signing off. We'll catch you guys next week. Make sure you guys check out Patrick and Jair's interview with somebody. I have no idea who. Pat hasn't even told us. So you guys enjoy that interview. And we'll catch you guys next week. Later.